Hello, I'm Hal Lublin.
And I'm Mark Gagliardi.
Since the dawn of humanity, one issue has gone unsettled. With the fate of the world in the balance, we're here to settle, once and for all. Best Chris Columbus movie.
That's right. Don't worry, everyone. We got this.
Podcasts should have a theme song. Podcasts should not have a theme song. Yes, they should. No, they shouldn't. They sound good. Yeah, but people are just going to skip past it. You know what? You're right. We got this.
Hal, you know, there are some directors, when you watch their movies, you know that you are going to get some art. And then there's Chris Columbus.
Wow. Do you just want to, did we come to bury Caesar or to praise him? Wasn't sure which.
I mean that, you know me well enough to know that saying that something is more entertainment than art is not an insult.
That's true.
I love how entertaining his movies are. Chris Columbus makes blockbusters about family.
Yeah.
You're not watching for him to say anything hugely important about society. You're not watching for a gritty, in-depth study of a dying industry. No, you want to watch heartwarming stories about families. And that is what I love about Chris Columbus movies.
It's interesting you bring up families because looking at his oeuvre, as it were,
which is French for eggs.
If you look at his eggs, you'll notice that there is a running theme in his films of family, including his early movies that he wrote, those being Gremlins and Goonies. Those were, he really sort of made his hay as a writer initially. Fun story about him. This, by the way, this topic was suggested by Jeff Babby or Baby. But Jeff
Thank
Baby.
You, Jeff. Sorry for jumping back in.
Hey, Jeffy Baby.
Jeffy Baby. Hey, thanks for the topic. Sorry we jumped right into it, but we're very excited. We like Chris Columbus. Jeffy Baby. You get it.
Hey, come on, baby. He was working with Spielberg. He did a lot of early work with Spielberg, and it was Spielberg's intention that he would write the screenplay to Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. So he met and essentially worked as a secretary for Lucas and Spielberg. As Lucas gave him here, I'm going to dictate the entire screenplay to you. And when Chris Columbus looked at what he had, he said, this seems really flat and kind of uninteresting. I know a million different ways I would take this that I think would improve it. But this is George Lucas. This is someone regarded among filmmakers, among his fans, as one of the greatest storytellers of all time. What right do I have to rewrite anything? I don't want to touch a single word. So he essentially typed up what had been dictated to him, submitted it, and got fired because the screenplay was too flat and nothing really jumped off the screen, which was a lesson to him.
Yeah.
And he'd already had success at this point. He'd already directed his first film at that point, that being Adventures in Babysitting. So that was a lesson to him at a relatively young age to trust his instincts, which has served him well throughout his career. I don't think we have to talk about every single movie ever made. I think we can pull some highlights and lowlights. I think there are only 3 finalists here.
Wow.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that. But to me, the fact that he wrote Gremlins and Goonies and Young Sherlock Holmes, all 3 screenplays of his, says a lot. He also is producing Gremlins 3, if that ever gets made.
Awesome.
So he's involved. That also may be
Are they going to battle the Goonies?
I think it's going to be Gremlins versus Goonies.
I remember years ago, I don't even know if I'm allowed to mention this, but maybe we'll have to cut this out. But I had a friend who was pitching that, and I was so excited. This was 15 years ago, but I was so excited at the prospect of that existing.
Oh, sure.
And to know that Columbus wrote both of them makes perfect sense. And it does make sense if you look at his movies. I said family movies before, but not only does he make movies that are generally for families, but also that explore the idea of family and loss within a family or loss of that family.
Sure.
In Goonies, it's all about this family being broken up, trying to prevent a family from being broken apart and trying to keep a family together, whether that family is, a bunch of 20-something people with AIDS in 1990 New York, or if that family is the Goonies, or if that family is John Candy and Maureen O'Hara in Only the Lonely. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Even the Christmas Chronicles Part 2, which just came out, of which he also directed, there's a theme of family in that. There's a theme of a family, adopted family, breaking apart and coming together. And simultaneously, that's played against what happens when you've lost a parent and then your remaining parent creates a blended family with someone else. What is that like when you are so upset? It explores real as much as it is. The reason why I was saying that it was like you were kind of throwing him aside is because it makes it sound like everything he does is pure popcorn, which I know is not what you were saying.
No.
But he does explore heavily emotional themes, even in things like Adventures in Babysitting. That's kind of there as well, starting there and going all the way through Christmas Chronicles Part 2. There are a lot of recurring themes of family. Also, interesting note, there are no Marvel films on here, not MCU, but Marvel, which is odd because he was attached to direct at least 3 different Marvel projects for a long time. He was going to be the guy who did Fantastic Four. It wound up being Tim Story, but that he is like a lifelong Marvel fan, which also makes
makes sense.
Starting with that first film, Adventures in Babysitting, you have Vincent D'Onofrio playing Thor.
Yeah.
Essentially the mechanic. But the daughter in that is
she wears her helmet.
Fan just like him. Yeah. She's a huge Thor fan.
Look, it's a shame that he didn't wind up in the MCU because his movies always have such emotional relevance. And we know that Marvel movies have absolutely no emotional heartstring pulling at all.
Never. I definitely have not cried.
Yeah.
I definitely
multiple times.
I definitely didn't almost cry watching the elevator fight from Winter Soldier this morning.
Just today, even. I'm thinking like the big moments, Spider-Man grabbing a hold of Tony Stark and saying, I don't feel so good.
Sure. That's easy.
Yeah.
That's easy. If you can find a way
I love
to
you
cry,
3000.
Yeah. If you can find a way to cry like Doctor Strange training, that's when you've reached an apex of either an emotional issue that needs to be dealt with outside of Marvel or just an attachment to Marvel.
Yeah.
Maybe both. I don't know your life.
What percentage of the movies that you watch do you cry in?
Of Marvel or general?
General. I find myself crying in movies that you're not supposed to cry in.
Yeah, I do too. I have 40 to 50% lowball.
Yeah.
It's not even a joke. Like this
is why we have this show, my friend.
You never know what's going to get you.
Yeah.
You just never know. I don't think I did not see Stepmom when it came out, which is of course about dealing with a lot of things. Number one is somebody getting remarried after divorce and the children having to deal with that, especially when the mother is not interested. And the mother played by Susan Sarandon, the new wife played by Julia Roberts, Ed Harris playing the ex-husband / new husband. Susan Sarandon passes away from cancer. I can't deal with that. I couldn't, just knowing now what a journey it would be for me. But those are the things that he deals. There are heavy moments in a lot of his movies, especially I think one of the 3 finalists for me has very emotionally heavy moments. The other ones less so, but are just, either masterfully made movies. I think one of them is a perfect film. And another one is a big blockbuster.
Well, even when he's asked to do big, giant, tentpole franchise movies, I'm thinking right now of Harry Potter. He set the tone for the Harry Potter movies and the emotional resonance that they needed to have. Like they have that resonance in the books. So who do you get that can handle that much and do it as deftly as he can? And you got to get somebody like him to do it. Especially because the idea of family with Harry and his family and creating this new family, like if Chris Columbus hadn't latched us from the beginning that Harry, Ron, and Hermione are a family unit, not a biological family unit, but a logical family unit, then none of the rest of it would have worked. So I think that that is the thing that he does really, really well. I am so curious to hear what you think the 3 contenders are, but should we just start mentioning some of our favorites? We don't have to go through all. He's directed 22 movies.
Yes.
Or not 22 movies. He's got 22 credits of things he's directed. He's directed, 18 movies or so.
Yeah. I think it'd be fun to talk about a couple that will not win, but are worth mentioning. I got one that's kind of out of left field.
Well, let's start with our personal favorites out of left field that we don't think have much of a shot, but we want to mention.
Oh boy. I don't think it has a shot, but there's something I really like about I Love You, Beth Cooper.
I never saw that.
In 2009. It's sort of like a Wild Night, where the nerdy valedictorian, he's played by Paul Rust, has a crush on Beth Cooper, who's the hot, popular girl played by Hayden Panettiere. And they wind up on like an adventure together. He says, I love you during his graduation speech. He decides he's going to tell her. He's going to say, I love you, Beth Cooper. That night, she shows up at his door, and then they go on a crazy adventure together. And nothing is as it seems, but it's a good, tight comedy. Paul Rust is really good in it. Hayden Panettiere is really good in it. It's a well-made movie. There's no way it's his best movie, but I feel like it kind of came at a time where there are a lot of like raunchy teen crazy one night. Like that was just sort of hot in maybe the late 2000s, early 2010s. We were, or had just been hot. We were kind of coming off of the American Pie era. And I think this film kind of gets lost in the shuffle, and there is good stuff in it. I haven't seen it recently enough to tell you if there's anything problematic in it. Guessing by the year it was made, I'm sure there was.
Sure.
My memory of it is that it was a decent winning little teen comedy, and I'm a sucker for a teen comedy. I thought that was a good one.
Well, he started his career with a One Crazy Night teen comedy.
True.
And this one is one that his first two movies, I don't know if they have the power to make it all the way through. I know one of them probably does not, but I loved it. And that's Heartbreak Hotel. Did you ever see Heartbreak Hotel?
No, but I know it's the one where the kid kidnaps Elvis to bring him to his mom.
Yeah. Teenage son kidnaps Elvis. And it's the teenage son. I don't remember his name, but he's the kid that played Ferris Bueller in the TV show version of Ferris Bueller. Right. And, he kidnaps Elvis and takes him to his mom. And then basically it's like, you know what it is? It's like, it plays like a Hallmark movie. Like 3 days in a small town, and the big megastar learns some things about himself and then plays in the kids' battle of the bands, or like plays the prom or whatever the concert is, that like this kid gets to have Elvis in his band, fronting his band in high school. And that, to me, not only did I love that movie because I grew up a huge Elvis fan, but also because the guy that played Elvis, David Keith, was from Knoxville, Tennessee. And he was like, at that time when that movie came out, it was like, oh my God, this Knoxville dude is in this giant movie, and he's starring in it, playing Elvis, Tennessee's favorite son. So as a little actor, this came out in 88. So I would have been 8 and 9 years old, and I'd been acting for a few years already. It blew my mind that someone from Knoxville could star in a movie. And I was doing a play at the time, and he showed up backstage because he was friends with some people there. And I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. And he had on his Heartbreak Hotel jacket, which was like, oh, David Keith likes people to know that he is David Keith. He's like, what, me, man? No, I wasn't in this movie that's on my jacket. No, I didn't play Elvis and keep the sideburns for an additional 2 years.
Oh, man. Charlie Schlatter, by the way.
Charlie Schlatter.
This played the son. And then Tuesday Weld played his mother.
Yeah. That one. And then, of course, the other one, the very first movie that he made, is the classic Adventures in Babysitting that you already mentioned.
Of course. Look, if you first had a crush on Elizabeth Shue after The Karate Kid, this is the movie that made you fall in love with her. I think this helped take her up another level as an actor in terms of notoriety. And it's a really great, again, like Madcap Adventures in One Night. Everything goes wrong. Such a great, even if you've never seen the movie, I know you've seen the poster. I know you've seen
of course,
the entire cast hanging from a rope at an office building, trying to climb up of it. It's just classic. It's a classic, like a really good movie. It's interesting that he was kind of the heir apparent to John Hughes. Even though he sort of learned under the Spielberg tree, or that's who he both sold scripts to and wrote things for.
What's that Midwest sensibility? It's the Chicago guys. You know, Adventures in Babysitting. When I went to school in Chicago, and we used to do movie nights in the Quad, and Adventures in Babysitting was one of the ones that they used to play because it is one crazy night out in Chicago.
Right.
Yeah. And it's a pretty perfect, fun, like kid. Like, yeah, this is like if you have a night with the babysitter that's boring after you see this movie, you feel like you've gotten robbed of an amazing, crazy adventure. And of course, it's got all the cliches like the older son who's in love with the babysitter, who's with the wrong guy, who's played by Brad Whitford.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a great movie. And he works with Anthony Rapp in that. Anthony Rapp plays the mouthy best friend, Daryl, who later he went back and worked with, obviously, in Rent.
That's pretty cool.
Anthony Rapp, the star of Rent.
Let me ask you something. I know we're sort of, it feels like we're going through chronological order, but I'm curious to take your temperature on this. How do you feel about Only the Lonely?
I think Only the Lonely is expert actors.
Mm-hmm.
Only the Lonely feels like it should be a play.
Right.
Except you can't make it the love letter to Chicago that movie also is. Like, you can't have a Chicago Fire Department crane on a stage. You can't have a picnic in the middle of Comiskey Park on a stage. But that movie, it's a really intimate, like, family story. It's just, and it really, we were talking earlier about how he deals with family. For those who haven't seen that movie, it's John Candy at his absolute funny, sad best. You know what I mean? Like, John Candy did funny, sad. Like, just lonely dude, funny, sad, better than anyone else ever, I think. And I think it's the best version, or one of the best versions of that. And come on, you got Maureen O'Hara playing his Irish mother, and Anthony Quinn is the neighbor that's been in love with her for 20 years. Like, it is a movie full of legends. They're seen on the airplane. You've got Maureen O'Hara and Anthony Quinn in their later years, flirt fighting on an airplane. I mean, it's just actors chewing up scenery. And that's another thing I think he does really well. I think it's the thing he does really well in Rent. I'm going to keep mentioning Rent, not only because I love it, but because I just saw it at the drive-in on Sunday night and was commenting then that he really just lets his actors go. He's like, you guys do your thing. He gets good actors who he trusts emotionally, and then he just lights it pretty and shoots it in beautifully framed shots. And that's what Only the Lonely feels like. What do you think of Only the Lonely?
I agree with you. I do think it feels more like a play. It's the same thing, not a problem, but the same feeling I had when I watched Moonstruck, where I thought, this is really well performed. I love the entire cast top to bottom. Even though in classic Nick Cave style, he's in a slightly different movie than everybody else.
Sure.
But that ending sequence of that film where they all wind up in the kitchen together, it's a play. I'm watching
It's John Patrick Shanley. It's one of the great American playwrights.
So there is something to that where I'm like, everything about this hits well. I like it. And yet, because it feels like a play, I look at it and go, why is this when something is so clearly a play, I think, why do you not, it feels like it needs to be adapted a little bit more. Like there's a step missing that would make it feel less presentational. That's the thing. It feels presentational. I had the same thing with the adaptation that Denzel Washington.
Fences? The August Wilson?
Yes, The Fences. Yes. Where I was like, this is great. I could watch these actors, each of them read the phone book, and I'm enjoying watching it. But I feel separated from it because it feels like I'm watching a play, which I should be doing in person. That. I go, why am I not sitting on the set with them? Yeah. Because that's what I feel like with a play. I love there's an energy to being in the room when actors like that are on a stage performing this stuff. And it all lands fine, but I feel separated from it because I want to be there in the room watching it because it feels so theatrical.
I see that. I think candy pulls you in though. You know what I mean?
You think I should eat more candy while I'm watching? I will totally do that.
You should eat more candy. No, I think John Candy is a kind of actor who it doesn't feel like he is presenting to you something from a stage. Like, boy, like the empathy that you just like, that guy is an empathy machine. Yeah. And so he really just draws you in. Like he carries, I mean, Ali Sheedy's amazing. They're all amazing in that movie, but it's just a John Candy as leading man powerhouse. It reminds me how good he was.
Sure.
And again, I think that's Columbus getting out of the way. But I see what you're saying about making it not a play, especially when he's written movies like Goonies and Gremlins, which probably Gremlins couldn't be done as a play.
You wouldn't want it to be.
I mean, wouldn't you though?
As a musical, yes.
Dude,
as a straight play, nah.
You wouldn't want to go see a straight play of Gremlins. They would have to have assorted places around the stage where the puppeteers could hide.
Exactly. I mean, it would be fun to be in a show like that. I feel like you would feel real good about it, but I don't know if I want to say it.
I would love to stage door a play like that. Like at the end, you're just standing outside waiting with your playbill, and then the Gremlins all come out at the same time in their just their civilian clothes. Some of them are like, I turn it off when I leave the theater. And some of them are just psychos.
Do you know that Stripe will stay for 2.5 hours until every autograph is signed after a show?
Well, you got to be careful because if that goes until after midnight, luckily it's not a long play. It's a one act.
He eats 3 people each time. It's fine. Are there any others? I only have one other that kind of stands out to me as one that is a finalist. Not a finalist, but one that I like that is not going to be a finalist.
Yeah, I mean, there's some great ones. There's some great movies he directed. I think we haven't talked about the finalists yet, but I mean, I just want to once again shout out Rent and how great I think that is as a film adaptation. Not only because, I mean, I did just watch it, so it's the movie that's freshest in my mind.
Sure, that's okay.
But I love the trust that Chris Columbus had in making that movie, not only in the way that he shot it and giving them the freedom to do their thing, but also in the fact that he brought back most of the original Broadway cast 10 years after they had put the show up in New York, after the show had premiered on Broadway. Cause it came out in 2005. I guess the show premiered in 1996 or won the Tony in 96.
Yeah.
And so it had been a while. Like, these guys aren't the right age for those characters anymore. They're not like dealing with, you know what I mean? Like, they're not dealing with the same things in their lives. But just that decision alone gives me mad respect for it. And there's a scene in that, and it's a thing that I think Chris Columbus does really well, which is he can do so much with a single moment so elegantly. There's a moment where they're all singing the title song of the show. They're singing the chorus, "We're not going to pay rent," right? They take their eviction notice and they light it on fire and they open up the window to their loft, which is overlooking all of the other windows in this, sort of street alley combo in New York. And yes, it's a musical production number, so stuff like this happens, but everyone they're not the only ones holding burning eviction notices out the window. Everyone in that whole building L-shaped complex thing has a lit on fire eviction notice out the window. And that in an instant says, this is a community. They're all going through the same thing. And that's all it took to say that, was just that moment. I think he does a great job of moments like that. So I'm throwing Rent into the mix of my personal favorites. Do I think it's his best? No. I think we can say, well, what do you think the 3 are?
Do you want me to say now?
Yeah. I mean, do you have any more that you don't think it's going to be?
One more I like but don't love, which is 9 Months. It's a charming movie with Julianne Moore and Hugh Grant when he's at the height of his initial Hugh Grantness.
Mm-hmm.
Where they have a one-night stand. She gets pregnant and then they're together. I think it's a one-night stand. They may even be a couple. But I remember seeing it in the theater and being, this is really charming.
Yeah.
It's a really sweet movie. It's about becoming a parent and him coming to grips with that because he's Hugh Grant playboy. Yeah. It's a different Hugh Grant than the Hugh Grant you get in Notting Hill, where he is a playboy in this, but so he's not, he's a little more confident. It's closer to
it's Swagger Grant rather than Stammer Grant.
Exactly. 100%. I think that is a good one. I'll tell you what I'm going to do right now.
Okay.
We're going to take a break right now before we get to what I think are our finalists. And we'll see if we agree. If not, we'll figure it out. But first, we got to take a break so you can hear about some of the other great shows on the Max Fun Network and who knows what else at this point.
Ooh.
Hey there, beautiful people. Did you hear that good news?
Something about the baby Jesus?
He's coming back.
Or do you mean the fact that Apple Podcasts has named Fanti one of the best shows of 2020?
I mean, we already knew that we was hot stuff, but a little external validation never hurts, okay?
Hosted by me, writer and journalist Jared Hill.
And me, the ebony enchantress myself. Tre'vell Anderson.
Fanti is your home for complex conversations about the gray areas in our lives, the people, places, and things we're huge fans of, but got some anti-feelings toward.
You name it, we Fanti. Nobody's off limits.
Check us out every Thursday on MaximumFun.org or wherever you get your Slayworthy audio.
I'm Jesse Thorne. On the next Bullseye, we've got the one and only Ted Danson. We'll talk about his new show, Mr. Mayor, about Cheers, and about the secret to success in comedy. I mean, I feel like one of your signature comedic moves at this point in your career is gazing. You do a lot of interesting gazing.
I also love this. Gazing. I love that. And if I'm not, I'm going to start, because that's great.
That's Bullseye. Find it on MaximumFun.org, NPR.org, and wherever you get podcasts.
All right, we're back.
What did we hear about?
Use your imagination and you will be right, my friend. You will be right.
All right, what do you think are the big three?
I think the big three are Home Alone, Mrs. Doubtfire, and Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone.
Absolutely. You will get no argument from me.
Anything else you want to add to that?
Of the ones he's directed? No, I enjoyed Percy Jackson and the Olympians, The Lightning Thief. I thought it was fun. I thought it was, well, we don't have any more Harry Potter for you. So, here's this in the meantime.
Here's another series we're adapting.
Yeah, exactly. It felt like, hey, did you guys like Harry Potter? Okay. Now instead of magic, it's, the Greek gods. Ready, go. And it was fine. It was fun, but it was not, I didn't think it was special. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, and he did too. He did Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone and Chamber of Secrets.
He moved to England for a year and a half to film those. And the reason he didn't direct the third one is because he wanted to see his family again. Let's start with that movie. A couple of interesting facts about it. Those books, particularly Sorcerer's Stone, helped his daughter learn how to read. And she asked him to make the movie of it. Now, Spielberg was initially attached to direct, and then he dropped out. Columbus campaigned really hard with Warner Brothers and with J.K. Rowling. And he said, look, whoever you're meeting with, just meet with me last. And he got a hold of the script and did a rewrite of it for free and brought that in. And that helped get him the job. He also pushed really, really hard for Daniel Radcliffe to play Harry Potter, even though his dad didn't like him. I think a lot of people may be familiar with that story, that he really wanted Daniel Radcliffe and they saw different actors and he just kept on and on. But Daniel Radcliffe's parents were adamant that he make school his priority. And then they went to see a show. Chris Columbus went to see his show, and Daniel Radcliffe and his father were in the front row. And they went and talked to them, and that sort of started the negotiation process that led to Daniel Radcliffe playing Harry Potter. And the rest is history. He was fantastic.
Yeah.
It is not an easy thing to adapt any book, let alone a fantasy book, because they are so dense and you have to leave things out. And it's even harder when everyone is staring at you expecting, because they've read all these books voraciously and they have a very strong image in their head of what everybody looks like and what everything looks like. With that in mind, how did you feel when you saw it the first time? And I know you're not like into the books as much. You've really come aboard in the movies. What was it that hooked you in when you first saw Sorcerer's Stone / Philosopher's Stone?
You know, it's funny that, like, I think it is that Chris Columbus magic, because to me, the thing that, yes, it's a amazing, beautiful, wondrous world, because I had read the first book before I saw the movie. So I, like everyone else, had ideas in my head of what this looked like. And I think I don't know who the production designer was for that, but that seems like another person that he would have probably worked in super close contact with. And he or she created something super, super impressive and magical. But I think that it's the way that he tells an emotional story, especially about a family, because if that movie hadn't hooked me in the first half hour with seeing how badly Harry was longing for a connection. He was longing for just any version of love. You know what I mean? He's not getting any love from anyone. He's a servant in this house living underneath the stairs and coming out when they want him to do chores. Everyone's mean to him. They say terrible things about his parents. And for him to find out, you know, that's a pretty magical story. for him to find out not only that he is special, but that there is a place where he will belong and can make friends, at like real friends, the kind that you make when you're a kid, that you tell everything to and you go through all of those moments in life with, and just setting us up with Harry wanting so badly to connect, and then spending the rest of the movie giving us, yes, beautiful magical creatures and locations, but also having that character just connect to people. That to me is what hooked me in on it. And that's that Chris Columbus emotional resonance that he finds and stuff.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it was one feat, and that is a team effort all around, obviously bringing it visually to life to the point where you go, oh, this feels like there's enough here that I connect to, having read the book, which obviously he had and was a huge fan of it, and insisted, mostly British production crew and an all British cast, like had a lot of reverence for the setting and world of the film. So it comes to life in a great way. Also, he's great at working with children.
Yeah.
There are few directors, if you look at just the collection of child actors that he worked with, it's a pretty great list. And there aren't bad child performances in his movies. He knows how to work with them and get great stuff out of it. Maybe Richard Donner with the cast of the Goonies is the only person I can think of off the top of my head who is maybe not only as equal, but a little bit better, just because that movie is so good with all those kids, a lot of whom were already seasoned actors by that point, but still you have to sort of pull it all together. I thought that there were the frustrating thing for me were all the things in the book that I liked that didn't make it into the movie, but I recognize you have to cut stuff out. And I thought he did a fantastic job, and he was the right guy to do those first two movies, which are way more family movies, and it has to grow up and mature as the series goes on.
Sure.
So him stepping away when he did was also a good choice, even if it was made out of, listen, I have to see my family. It's been too long that I've been away from them. So,
but the third one is when things start to get dark anyway.
Exactly.
The real darkness starts to come in, like, the first one, it's lots of magical Christmas time things.
Exactly. He's the perfect guy for that, and he stepped away at the right time for him and for the film series as well. I think that was the right choice. He doesn't have a bigger movie on his resume in terms of box office success, although the other two are also huge hits and classics.
But not Harry Potter level.
Right, but
of success.
If you think about it, that has the benefit of being a highly anticipated, neither of the other two movies were highly anticipated adaptations of something that everybody knew. So
true.
They were either going to sink or swim based on how good the movie was. And if you argue, well, he had Robin Williams for Mrs. Doubtfire, he also had Robin Williams for Bicentennial Man. And that was a
not
box
great.
office failure. Whether the quality of the film notwithstanding, that wasn't a success. So that doesn't mean, and especially that came off the heels of, this is a good time to shift into our second finalist, Mrs. Doubtfire, which may be Robin Williams' best movie.
He's pretty perfect in it. Again, get out of the way, Chris Columbus. Trust. He's a trusting director. That movie opens with Robin Williams in a voice booth. So obviously you and I are going to love that movie. That it begins with a voiceover artist doing his thing in a San Francisco voice booth, following along to a cartoon, and also deals with, a family that is breaking apart and trying to put it back together again. Yeah. I mean, it's really fun. That performance from Robin Williams is great. Everyone in that movie is firing on all cylinders. Pierce Brosnan is great as the guy that he's basically Paris from Romeo and Juliet. You can't help but love him. He's just a handsome doofus.
Right.
And Sally Field is amazing in her mom trying to hold things togetherness of it.
All the kids are great.
The kids are great. Mara's great in it.
Yes.
Yeah. And even like the side performances, like Harvey Fierstein as and I don't remember who the other actor was, but they played the makeup artist uncles that turned him into Mrs. Doubtfire.
Yeah. They're fantastic. The way the movie was shot was Robin Williams would do like 2 or 3 takes based on the script, and then an additional 12 to 18 takes.
Oh my God.
Where he would just go, Chris Columbus would go like, all right, go for it. Just do whatever you're going to do. And they wouldn't stop until Robin Williams felt like he'd I don't have anything else. I feel like I've done the best I can with this scene. And then they would move on. The moment where he's drunk and going back and forth and his teeth fall out into the drink was an improvised moment that the crew and cast didn't know. Like nobody told them that it was going to happen. So you get to see their genuine reaction to things. And it takes a certain amount of either confidence as a filmmaker, trust, certainly the way you bring up, to allow those things to happen, to say, hey, I know what I'm doing here, but I also know who I have here, and that their ability to find and discover things is going to be a huge asset. So that's what I saw that I loved in all the comedy clubs, how much energy he has. So they find a way to channel that. It's also incredibly sad.
That's the thing. They channel that, that he's so funny. He's so funny in that movie.
Great laughs.
But he's also like, it's sad now thinking about it, knowing that he's no longer with us, that, ultimately depression got him, as it has so many. But Robin Williams, like the sadness of that character, and that he could, we get Mork and Mindy Robin Williams in some scenes, and we get Good Will Hunting Robin Williams in some scenes. We get this combination. And again, I do think it all comes back to Chris Columbus trusting. Like like as a director, so much of it is trust. And I think that's what makes him shine. That's what makes him excel, and knowing how to pull these emotional scenes out of people. Yeah, I can't say anything else about Mrs. Doubtfire except it's delightfully funny. It's a wonderful performance from Robin Williams in essentially 2 roles. That said, look, man, there's a movie on this trio that has won multiple episodes, I think, of this show. At least one that is an absolutely perfect movie.
Yes.
And that's Home Alone.
It is Home Alone.
No one has directed slapstick that well since Chuck Jones directed Wile E. Coyote.
It's true. It's incredible. Joe Pesci, by the way, is in the movie because Chris Columbus is a fan. So once Macaulay Culkin was cast and they had Joe Pesci and Daniel Stern, he had the freedom to cast people that he was fans of from their other work, which is how you get someone like Catherine O'Hara, someone like John Hurd. Those are people, he was an SCTV fan. So he went and got Catherine O'Hara, who is 100% the emotional anchor of that movie.
Yeah.
And it's a great reminder of how fantastic she is. And it was such a great role for her. The John Candy cameo, which was filmed in one day in literally 24 hours of filming. Is such a great, just everything. It's like he's called on every ability he has, and he's working with one of the biggest child stars of all time, and helps him carry a movie by himself. Where the truth is, like, Macaulay Culkin, who seems like, from everything I've seen, to have grown up to be a pretty cool dude.
Yeah. Have you seen him in his mask? He has a COVID mask uses the poster from the movie of Kevin holding his cheeks. It's great. Anyway.
I have. It's fantastic. Yeah. Besides the fact that he's not a child disaster, like a child actor disaster story, which is great. There is a charm and a charisma to him. He's like not the best actor, not the best child actor in the world. He wasn't the best child actor working at that time. There's something about him that was sincere and relatable that made him just the perfect person to star in it. And Chris Columbus, again, gave him the environment in which to succeed.
It's trust, man.
Gave Joe Pesci a turn at comedy that he hadn't really had before. He was he was the guy from Raging Bull. And the guy who would do Goodfellas in the same year, but, brought him in and turned him into a slapstick comedian. And like there's just no element in that movie that doesn't work. There just isn't one.
It's the best third act of any movie in history, I think.
Absolutely. But the first and second acts are great too.
The first and second acts are great too. Yes. The whole thing. They set up everyone beautifully with the whole family. And again, it's that Chris Columbus thing of family being ripped apart and having to come back together. So you spend the first 20 minutes learning about all of the family. And that's another one of those, like that Rent moment I was mentioning. How do you do things in a concise way? How do you pack so much into a concise moment? You have the entire family in the first 20 minutes of the movie the night before they're about to all go on a vacation together. So you see how Kevin deals with every single member of that family. You see a little bit of how they deal with each other. You watch Catherine O'Hara do her thing. You know what I mean? His economy is masterful.
I would imagine there are people who, if they didn't know Chris Columbus directed it, they would probably guess that John Hughes did, which makes sense because John Hughes wrote the script.
Mm-hmm.
He also wrote the sequel, Home Alone 2 Lost in New York, which I rewatched this holiday season and is actually a way better sequel than I remember.
Yeah.
But the fact that he's able to—
I'm waiting for the new version to come out.
The fact that he's able to— I know. The fact that he's able to make a John Hughes script feel like a John Hughes directed movie speaks to, again, to how well he connects to those emotional pieces. It's not— he doesn't have the advantage of directing something he also wrote, so that he knows all the moments that he wants to pull off. This is him working with somebody else's script and being the best person to do it. It's hard to imagine, like, there's nobody else I can think of that could have directed that movie and gotten anything better out of it.
I wonder, based on
the whole chicken.
What were you saying?
He ate the whole chicken. He got every piece of meat off the chicken and then turned the bones into tools.
Yeah. He's got that chicken skin canoe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, he does.
I wonder if part of it is that, because you mentioned before, like with Adventures in Babysitting, that it comes out of that, a lot of that came out of Columbus being a Marvel fan. I wonder if it's the fact that he knows how to unapologetically be a fan of something, and just the enthusiasm that a person who is good at being a fan has, who focuses on the right things about a project and trusts the people around him. And he's a fan of all of these actors that he put in Home Alone. He's a fan of Robin Williams, so he lets him do 18 takes. He's a fan of the Harry Potter books that taught his kid how to read. So he comes to it from a fan's point of view. So he's almost like the perfect fan director of things. And yeah, I mean, you never really think of him in the pantheon of great. He's not on the Mount Rushmore of great movie directors because he doesn't have a visual style like Wes Anderson has, or he doesn't have a Bernard Herrmann writing music that to accompany his crazy camera angles like Alfred Hitchcock had. But he's got his fandom and he lets people do their thing. And I would argue, aside from it being a nearly perfect movie anyway, I would argue that it's that fan mentality that is the reason that all of these are great, but is the reason that in particular Home Alone is so good.
Absolutely. And it's a brilliant Christmas movie, which is very interesting because the reason why John Hughes gave him Home Alone is because Chris Columbus was supposed to direct Christmas Vacation, but Chevy Chase had him tossed off of it. And John Hughes, of course, who is a writer and, one of the National Lampoon screenwriters, and the original is based off of an article that he wrote. That's what gave us Chris Columbus directing Home Alone. It would have been interesting to see what his version of Christmas Vacation would have been, because it's another family heavy story,
and family falling apart.
Thank Spaghetti Monster for small miracles.
Right? Are you a Pastafarian? I didn't know that.
I'm open to it.
We'll cover that on our Best Religion episode.
I mean, I'm Jewish, but I love spaghetti. So you tell me.
Yeah. Look, man, I get it. I'm Italian Catholic and I love latkes.
Especially Gravas.
Yeah. Which ones are Gravas?
They're the Andy Kaufman ones.
Oh.
You're welcome. Do we even need to debate these three movies, or did we name basically show, place, and—
I really do think we named win, place, and show. I think the bronze medal, honestly, we might be differing on who gets the bronze and who gets the silver. I think that Mrs. Doubtfire gets the bronze medal. I think that Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone gets the silver medal for all of the groundwork that it laid, if nothing else. But come on, man. We knew going in, I think, what the greatest Chris Columbus movie. And by the way, Chris Columbus, the director, this is a mini episode of We Got This, is the best Chris Columbus.
Yep. There's no doubt there.
Yeah.
No doubt at all.
But yeah, I think that it's a no-brainer. Home Alone is a perfect movie.
Well, then, people of the world, let me say this. Hey, Chris Columbus, look what you did, you little jerk. You made a perfect movie. You proud of yourself? Now you gotta go share, you gotta go share a cot with the kid who pees himself, played by your brother. I can't remember his name. I can't remember that character.
I just remember him sitting there drinking Pepsi. And now every time I watch Succession, I see Kieran Culkin sitting there waggling his eyebrows while drinking a Pepsi.
Boy, did that kid turn out to be a great actor.
Yeah, right? He's good.
Oh my goodness. So good. But we digress.
Yeah. It's Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief.
It's Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief. Congratulations, Chris Columbus, on your long and storied and still active career. You have no fewer than 3 or 4 projects currently in development or in production, according to IMDb, unless they're lying to us. Long may you reign. Look, not every movie that anybody makes is going to be a huge hit, but when you strike a vein, boy, do you strike it. Yeah. And congratulations on making emotionally relevant movies about families, about parents and children. And congratulations on making a perfect movie, which very few filmmakers have, but you did it. You gave the world the McAllister family on the screen in 1990's Home Alone. It is your best movie and maybe one of the best movies ever made. Ask Mark Evan Jackson.
That's right.
Asked and answered.
It's such a heartwarming, it's a short episode, but a heartwarming short episode.
That's right.
Yeah. This topic is closed, but there are many more to discuss. So please reach out to us on Twitter, or
you can email us at wegotThisPodcast@gmail.com, or you can go to our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/WeGotThisPodcast. Thank you to producer Ken Plume, researcher Kate McManus, graphic designer Uri Kelman, and QA engineer Jen Alba.
And thanks, of course, to our musicians, Jonathan Dinerstein and Mike Furman, for our score and theme song, respectively. And thanks to you, the people of the world. You know, Chris Columbus did a lot of movies about bringing families together. And thank you for joining us and bringing this people of the world family together. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. For Hal Lublin, I'm Mark Gagliardi.
For Mark Gagliardi, I'm Hal Lublin. And don't worry, everybody. We got this.
We got this.
MaximumFun.org.
Comedy and culture.
Artist owned.
Audience supported.